USA, State of the Union. In this piece, I examine the topic of animal rights across the United States. I gather inspiration from disparate sources, from nostalgic postcard, iconography, and pop references to depictions of animal situations in each state. I look at our 50 states from both entertaining and serious perspectives. Nellie the cat is spotted within each painting. Untethered and unafraid, unlike the animals floating about, she reacts with a purely feline attitude, with indifference, curiosity, caution, or by taking a nap. Alaska. In the wintry landscape with the northern lights of Alaska and the starry state flag, the state animal moose and the willow ptarmigan state bird reside. In the letters, you see the mosquito state bird, forget-me-not flowers, a polar bear, an Alaskan native, painter Bob Ross, and prospectors trek during the Klondike gold rush. Not so lucky animals float in bubbles. The trophy-hunted grizzly bear, the reindeer rounded up for display and harvesting their antlers. Rodeos start early with children. The Iditarod, where dogs run 1,100 miles on the frozen land, and the dangers and isolated life of horses in the carriage industry. Hawaii. In exotic and tropical Hawaii, surfers surf gigantic waves while hula dancers dance. The Pearl Harbor Memorial and statue of King David Kalakaua exist alongside the state animals, humpback whale and seal, and Hawaiian goose with hibiscus state flower and island mountains. In bubbles, a darker side exists for animals, fish, and fowl. First, the cockfighters are raised and trafficked to Guam. Next, long-line fisheries with their bycatch of turtles, false killer whales, along with targeted swordfish and tuna. Another bubble shows the aquaculture fish farms with issues of disease and overfishing. Then there's the amusement parks and hotels where dolphins are exploited and live in confinement. The dairy industry is cruel, but in Hawaii it's an environmental problem as well, with waste and using much of the water supply. Washington. With Mount Rainier and Ruby Beach in the background, state animals sit, marmots, startling a visitor. Letters spell Washington and contain Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, an orca, the Space Needle, and the Fremont Troll. The elk is in the crosshairs in its bubble, while in other bubbles a rope-dragged calf provides entertainment at the rodeo. The dairy industry's CAFOs with their captive cows pollute the groundwater. Monkeys die imprisoned at the Washington National Primate Research Center at UW. And at Debbie Doolittle's petting zoo, over 70 customers get bites, yet 2 girls pose with a capybara. Oregon. The beaver is the state animal in the beaver state. Those who've lived in Oregon include the first Chinese-American pilot, Lee Hing, Kiss's Tommy Thayer, and Matt Groening, whose Bart Simpson hangs with some beavers near Wakena Falls and Haystack Rock. The meadowlark is perched on the witch's mouth. Floating over these sites and people are scenes of animals in peril, like the Bureau of Land Management's Wild Horse Roundup, a coyote killing contest by the Young Farmers and Ranchers program, and the Oregon National Primate Research Center's confined macaques. Also, there's a mink caged on a mink farm and fish contained on an aquaculture farm. California. In bubbles, I depict the hidden animals. In these bubbles, I show animal activists trying to save a downed calf and arrested for grand larceny, the captive orcas of SeaWorld, the transport truck of pigs to the fancifully painted slaughterhouse, the fires of California, the infant deaths of monkeys used in animal experimentation at UC Davis, and the multiple deaths of racehorses at Santa Anita Raceway. These worlds float over the stylized images of California. Minnie Mouse holds the state flag with the bear as a symbol, flag waving over the bear, the state animal, all near the Hollywood sign. Utah. Land of extremes, Utah is home to Donnie and Marie, Mormonism, and Zion and Bryce National Parks, but is the second largest state with mink farms. Called the Beehive State with the elk as state animal, Utah's Anikei wild horses are rounded up. Robert Smithson's spiral jetty earthwork is revealed during drought, and the U of Utah is cited with gross incompetence testing on marmosets. Pigs suffer at the massive factory pig farm near the Tree of Utah sculpture by Carl Moman, while festival balloons float by. Home to Butch Cassidy, Topaz Internment Camp Museum, Dinosaur Trail, and Monument Valley, Utah is one of the 2 states to still use the gas chamber to kill dogs. Arizona. Against the backdrop of Canyon de Chelly National Monument, Lake Mead, sagebrush, sequoia, the state flag, flower and animal, ringtail, wile E. coyote and the roadrunner, Native American sacred lands and artwork, and the city of Tombstone float bubbles. In these bubbles, animals are caught in the secluded worlds of canned hunts and their captive-bred lions, mega farms of dairy where cows and calves live only to produce, surgeon training on pigs at U of Arizona, and at their medical center testing on monkeys provided by Investigated Monkey Farm in Mesa, and bull riding at rodeos. Idaho. Idaho's Appaloosa Horse State Animal runs in the field near Snake River and the Smoky Mountains. Sun Valley skiers fly through the sky while nearby bubbles contain evidence of bear breeding at Yellowstone Bear World, mink confined for their furs, a calf and an enormous CAFO, shrine circus elephants forced to entertain, and a wolf targeted in one of the last remaining states with no protection. Letters contain Sacagawea, whose strength and heroism aided the Lewis and Clark expedition. Ernest Hemingway chose Idaho as his home. A Spud drive-in truck, emblem of Idaho's #1 crop, and Craters of the Moon National Monument. Nevada. The state animal in Nevada is the bighorn sheep, as well as home to Las Vegas, gambling capital of the world, Lake Tahoe, Reno, the desert, Burning Man, the Hoover Dam, and ballooning. Siegfried and Roy live on as a statue, but the risk of exotic animals and entertainment was realized when Roy's spinal cord was severed during an act. In Bubbles, I depict animals used in petting zoos, also dangerous and cruel to cubs taken from their mothers. The elephant is trained and chained as an infant to entertain. The dolphin is exploited to swim with tourists, and mountain lions are killed for sport. Wild horses run free, but seen to take resources needed by cattle ranchers, they are rounded up and transported to holding facilities held in pens, processed for adoption, sold for meat over the border, or long-term storage. Wyoming. Floating in the bubbles of Wyoming, horses try to escape their roundup. Sheep are funneled together in this large sheep-raising state. A coyote is victim to coyote whacking. A hunter sits pleased with her canned hunt victim, and a bull is antagonized to buck off its rider in a rodeo. In the scenic background and letters spelling Wyoming, there's Grand Teton, and Old Faithful. Yogi Bear offers words to the wise, and the state animal, the buffalo, lives in Yellowstone Park. The varied heroes of this state include Jackson Pollock, Lakota Medicine Man Black Elk, and Nellie Taylor Ross, in the first state to elect a female governor and to allow women to vote. Colorado. The images featured in the background are idealistic of Colorado, with the mountains, hot air balloon, state flag, and the state animal and bird. In the bubbles are things that go on in that state that are cruel to animals. Coyote killing contests, live pig testing, a sanctuary with animal acts, wrangling calves and elephant acts at a local circus make up the bubbles of Colorado. The word Colorado is spelled out and contains more iconic images. New Mexico. Letters spelling New Mexico contain white sands, meow wolf, petroglyphs, Native American pottery, adobe houses, Ricardo Cates' Without Reservations comic, folk art, and Bisty Badlands. There are many flying objects over the Land of Enchantment's mesas, earthships, and state yucca plant flower, bear, and roadrunner. There's balloons, a spaceship, and bubbles contain animals killed in exotic canned hunts, animals in the rodeo, a roadside zoo where the bear, state animal, and others exist in cages with no enrichment. The business A to Z Film Animals has altered animal health certificates, and from helicopters, the U.S. Forest Service gunned down feral cattle. Montana. Montana's big skies, lakes, and mountains form the backdrop to a grizzly bear who is the state animal. Yellowstone and Glacier National Parks, a tribute sculpture of Shep, the famous sheepdog. Big Sky, Montana skiing, roaming horses, bison, and is David Lynch's birthplace. Bubbles hold the tough world of the rodeo as entertainment, a trapped animal in this remaining state where steel traps are still used. Cattle languish in massive feedlots, big game hunts for trophies, and captured wild horses await their fate. North Dakota. The rodeo is a feel the dirt in your teeth way of life in North Dakota, and an entertainment fun for all but the animals involved. The elephants in Jordan World Circus and the trophy-hunted buffalo are others. A cow trots after her calf, stolen so others can have her baby's milk. And in another bubble, the NIH-funded NDSU's animal testing is shown with attack ads, rated among the worst in treatment to their animals. The Enchanted Highway with its giant metal sculptures, the Badlands, and the Nakota horse state animal fill the landscape. Letters contain Teddy Roosevelt, who called this state the love of his life. Lawrence Welk and Lakota Nation's chief Rain in the Face, who fought alongside Sitting Bull, a ladybug, and a sunflower. South Dakota. Calamity Jane lived and Wild Bill Hickok died in Deadwood. Sitting Bull lived in South Dakota, home of Mount Rushmore and the enormous carved rock of Crazy Horse. Other sculptures include iconic Mother Goose and a large seal. In a land of contrast, the Badlands and fields of sunflowers exist together, and Corn Palace is a tribute to the corn industry. The coyote, the state animal, howls near a bubble showing the huge sport of coyote hunting. More bubbles contain experiences for sheep. A bighorn sheep targeted in a canned hunt, sheep exploited for research at Ovis, and mutton busting, where 3 to 6-year-old children wrangle sheep to the ground. The largest Smithfield processing plant in the U.S., where factory farm pigs lead horrific lives, was shut down during COVID with over 300 deaths of workers. Nebraska. Nebraska's white-tailed deer state animal leaps towards a bubble with a young boy and his trophy-hunted deer. Other exploited animals include a lamb marked for death trying to escape in this growing meat industry. Wild horses living in long-term holding facilities, an overstuffed chicken lies in Costco's largest chicken processing plant, and a calf is restrained in the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center to endure controversial research. While one slogan announces, Nebraska, it's not for everyone. The Cornhusker State is home to the iconic giant cowboy, Malcolm X, Marlon Brando, Fred Astaire, Lakota Chief Red Cloud, Kool-Aid, and a tornado. Kansas. The letters that spell Kansas contain Amelia Earhart, Dodge City, covered wagons, and mushroom rocks. The wheat fields of Kansas create a perfect place for tornadoes, as shown in The Wizard of Oz, home of Dorothy. The state buffalo stands firm, but the flag bends to the force with Elvira Gulch, who becomes the Wicked Witch, flies into the heart of the storm. Bubbles float above the fray with animals caught in other storms. 3-month-old pigs and CAFOs marked for slaughter. The cows bred as meat where their processing plants became COVID spreaders. Killing contests deemed necessary in saving cows trapped in feedlots. Carden Circus cited for abuse, with tigers forced into submission. And the 4-H club where children are taught young that animals are prized, but only as commodity. Oklahoma. The Sooner State has oil rigs and wind farms, cyclones, and blue skies. Numerous indigenous tribal nations are in Oklahoma, and Cherokee Chief Wilma Mankiller is on a coin, along with many other awards. Characters Will Rogers, Don Woods' Gusty cartoon, and the buffalo, raccoon, and white-tailed deer state animals are near the iconic Route 66. Both the white-tailed deer and the dove are peaceful and gentle symbols, but are sought-after targets of hunters. In other bubbles, Oklahoma's cattle live their lives on feedlots. Roosters are bred for sale to countries where cockfighting is legal. Hog Dog Rodeo, where hogs, detusked and outnumbered, are attacked for entertainment. And the infamous Tiger King Zoo of exotic wildcats is now closed, so those fortunate tigers ended up in a Colorado sanctuary, while animals of the many other roadside zoos languish. Texas. Against the backdrop of Texas Roadhouse, Cadillac Ranch, Prada installation, the Longhorn state animal and state flag sits Yosemite Sam. Bubbles float over the long road with dogs used for testing at Texas A&M. Cows are captive in massive feedlots. Children chase, capture, and bag young pigs in killing contests, while families of feral pigs are shot from helicopters. Minnesota. Minnesota is home to Charles Schulz, creator of Peanuts, and a town mayor that is a dog. The state animals and flags create a fun backdrop to darker scenarios. One particularly sinister scene contains an animal model resource catalog facility that was found to have collars with tags hanging from cats killed and sold. Other bubbles portray an elephant in the circus, a buck who stars in a canned hunt, a factory farm of pigs that pollute the waterways, and animal testing violations found at the University of Minnesota Medical School. These unrelated events happen simultaneously, many behind closed doors. Iowa. In the Iowa painting, home to the Iowa caucuses and the Iowa State Fair, the American goldfinch is the state bird. Corn crops and wind farms are abundant, and monarch butterflies rest on their journey north. In Bubbles, we look behind the scenes where dog racing continues, numerous puppy mills exist despite violations, and hunting for sport is a favorite pastime. Iowa is a major pork production state. The sad view of a young pig on its way to slaughter serves to encompass the many horrors of factory farming. The pollution of the waterways, mass extermination of pigs due to the pandemic, gestation crates for sows, and pigs crammed into filthy conditions never to see daylight. A man was banished for life from attending the Iowa State Fair because he exposed and reported an abusive pig owner. Missouri. In Missouri, the Ozark, mountains, and lakes are home to Dagwood and Blondie Bumstead, Maya Angelou, Chuck Berry, and Mark Twain. The Gateway Arch, the Missouri Mule, and the Bee are symbols of the Show Me State. In Bubbles, the plentiful puppy mills are depicted as well as circus animals forced to perform at the Cited for Cruelty Carden Circus. Rats in cruel tests at Mizzou, Missouri U, and underfed horses found in horse blood farms funded by Central Biomedia. Ranking second in the amount of giant factory farms, 95,000 in 2020, Missouri contaminates its waters and exploits its animals and workers with its CAFOs. Arkansas. Please join Bill Clinton, Maya Angelou, Johnny Cash, Miss Arkansas Rice Festival Queen, and the Boggy Creek Monster in introducing Arkansas, the spinach capital of the world. Maman, Louise Bourgeois' 30-foot-tall spider, a sculpture of Popeye, and the white-tailed deer state animal share the landscape with a honeybee and an apple blossom. Oversized young broiler chickens at Tyson are unable to walk. Horses are tethered to carriages, a frequent fish kill, and the hog-dog rodeo are depicted in bubbles that float nearby. A greyhound is free at last as dog racing ends in Arkansas. Wisconsin. The backdrop of Wisconsin contains idealistic images: the Green Bay Packer cheeseheads, the Dells with tour boat, a lighthouse, flag, Badger state animal, and the robin, state bird. The postcard logo Wisconsin contains iconic images of the state and a picturesque dairy farm of days gone by. In the bubbles are things that go on with the hidden animals. Thousands of mink are culled due to the COVID-19 and cruel mink farms, and abuses of primates occur beyond the usual at University of Wisconsin's National Primate Research Center. Age limitations for hunters allow toddlers to hunt, and wolf-killing contests remain popular. In industrial dairy farms, tourists view cows tethered to machines in rotary milking parlors, while beyond the sanitized scene in these buildings, toxic waste kills fish and pollutes the waterways. Louisiana. Louisiana's state bird, pelican, flies freely next to a bubble containing a pelican victim of the BP oil spill. An alligator lurks in the swamp, but in a bubble, alligators are crammed onto farms for their skins and meat, or hunted as an exotic creature. Baby primates are tested on at Tulane University. Police dogs are trained to attack in prisons. And at Louisiana State, live dogs are acquired from local animal shelters to be tested on. Mike the tiger lives in beautiful isolation as a living mascot. These scenes float above the landscape with the state bear, flag, and exotic beauty of Mardi Gras, the French Quarter, art in the Ninth Ward, and Louis Armstrong. Illinois. Betty White, Elsie Seeger's Popeye, Michelle Obama, Ronald Reagan, and Miles Davis are just a few of those famous from Illinois. The landscape of Illinois with the white-tailed deer state animal, Chicago's sky deck at Willis Tower, and Wrigley Field provide the backdrop for unfortunate animals. Drifting bubbles hold a trophy-hunted stag and a tiger in a traveling circus act. A captive monkey is shipped to Chicago before being trucked to its final destination, and a beagle is used for testing at Illinois U. Sows and piglets and farrowing crates in industrial farming also float by. Indiana. Indiana contains idealistic images in this painting. The Indianapolis 500, the state flag, and the state bird, the cardinal, live among the snowy pines, fields, and lake beaches. It is the birthplace of the King of Pop and childhood home of Abe Lincoln. In the bubbles, animals of Indiana face their fate. The pointless fatal swim tests for mice at Lilly Laboratories, elephants mistreated at Wilston Wildlife Park, and fish circling for their miserable lives in aqua farms are a few. A sow unable to reach her dying piglet due to a gestation crate the size of her body in a factory farm is another. 75 cows escape the farm and run for their lives only to be rounded up and sent back to the farm to face their bleak future. As with other cows, their calves will be stolen so others can have their milk. Kentucky. In the landscape and in the letters spelling Kentucky, the state animal, squirrel, climbs a tree by the rolling fields and Appalachian mountains. The state flag flies near Dinosaur World, and Kentucky natives Abe Lincoln and Muhammad Ali take their place. In bubbles, cocks are raised for fighting and trafficked to Guam. Elephants are abused in roadside Carden Circus, as well as Kentucky Zoo making the 10 worst list for elephants. Veterans Affairs labs perform kitten and cat spine severing experiments that end in death, though I just read those are going to stop. The Kentucky Derby has a history of drugging the horses, and early deaths with accidents are all too common. An adjacent bubble portrays a young horse after its first race escaping and running down the Kentucky Highway. Mississippi. Steamboats, gators, white-tailed deer, and the red fox state animals live in Mississippi, where Oprah, B.B. King, Elvis, and Muppets Jim Henson were born. In the same state, 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, the first African-American child to desegregate William Frantz Elementary School, helped pave the way for civil rights action in the South. In contrast, non-human animals' well-being remains uncared for. Fish raised in aquaculture, a pelican in the BP oil spill, monkeys tied to dogs for the banana derby, and alligators raised in captivity are hunted. In another scene, a young otter dies as a result of stress from public handling, a recent victim at G&J Petting Zoo. Michigan. The postcard lettering of Michigan features images of Diana Ross, Joe Louis, sites, and museums. It hovers over the lake regions, a waterfall, Detroit, the deer state animal, and robin state bird. The fist sculpture honors Joe Louis. Perched on the letters, Nellie sits unfazed with the bubbles nearby containing captive baby bears and Ted Nugent's hunting company of exotic animals. Another bubble depicts a mink farm, where the COVID pandemic causes thousands of mink to have their short lives in cages shortened. In another, Ford's use of pigs in crash testing is represented. Ford worked around their promise to stop the use of live pigs by using recently killed pigs instead. Ohio. Here's Goofy in Spoonerville, and in other areas an Amish carriage, a farm, a white-tailed deer state animal, a cardinal, and a dog, the new state shelter pet. Toni Morrison and Annie Oakley were born in Ohio and fill the letters along with Cornhenge and the red carnation state flower. Ohio is one of the 5 top destinations for canned hunts, so floating over the fields we see a hunted trophy animal. Tilapia aquaculture has fish crammed into tanks and harvested at 6 months, not their natural 10 years. And though a felony crime, dogfighting is growing. Dark Yin Yang, the bubble depicts the testing on live pigs at U of Cincinnati, weighed against pigs' short lives and CAFOs. Even the #1 ranking zoo in America has a cheetah attack, the result of the stress of a captive wild animal. Tennessee. Tennessee is the home of Dolly Parton's Dollywood and Elvis's Graceland. Other iconic figures are Olympic champion Wilma Rudolph, the Ducks of Memphis, the Tennessee Walking Horse, and the Moon Pie. Symbols of the state include the raccoon, salamander, and iris, and the Grand Ole Opry. Animals are used for entertainment like the horse with soaring, a pain inflicted to perform an exaggerated gait, and in hunting where metal leg traps are still used. This is a top beef-producing state in the U.S., poultry operations making life and death for chickens intolerable, and a rabbit's life of isolation and experimentation in NIH is funded $377 million in 2020 at Vanderbilt U. North Carolina. Nina Simone and Andy Griffith, two of the many iconic people born in North Carolina, broadcast the beauty and fun of this state before the Blue Ridge Mountains and wild horses of the Outer Banks. Sites include the Metamorphosis sculpture, High Point's giant drawers, Chimney Rock, Black Wall Street, Santaland, and the state squirrel and cardinal. In contrast, bubbles hold baby primates tested on at Wake Forest U, neglect of bears at Tregembo Animal Park, exploited exotic pets, and cocks raised for fighting to send to places like Guam. The multiple hog CAFOs spray their toxic waste over farms, and floods add to the horror for the crammed pigs. Alabama. Alabama does not ban or regulate keeping exotic pets. Alligators are killed for sport, and toothless monkeys chained to dogs are raced in the banana derby. The University of Alabama at Birmingham performs cruel tests on baboons, and this state offers great hunting opportunities of the dove, our symbol of peace. In the background and in letters spelling Alabama, a peaceful existence is portrayed, where the bear, state animal, relaxes. Boys in a canoe float on the Sipsey Swamp with the state flag and northern flicker. The Edmund Pettus Bridge and civil rights activist John Lewis are represented as an alligator lurks nearby. South Carolina. The state animal of South Carolina is the white-tailed deer, and the bird is the Carolina wren. Floating above a golf course, river, and beach landscape are bubbles. The bubbles detail monkeys chained to dogs for the banana derby, petting zoos where alligators are manhandled, and a horse carriage collapses as the horse tries to escape. A pig marked for killing has a miserable short life, and Alpha Genesis peddles macaque monkeys to the National Institute for Health for their animal testing. Letters spelling the name contain notable people from there: Chubby Checkers, Vanna White, Eartha Kitt, Shepard Fairey's artwork, James Brown, and Dizzy Gillespie. Georgia. In letters spelling Georgia, there's MLK, Ray Charles, Little Richard, Jimmy Carter, and Oliver Hardy, some of the many greats born there. Jasper John's painting and the plaque starting the Appalachian Trail provide a base for Georgia-born Cabbage Patch dolls. Bubbles float before a live oak and the white-tailed deer state animal. Each contains a dark world for animals. Chickens are crammed into cages and male chicks are disposed of. Primates are tested on at National Primate Research Center, and shark fin soup leaves sharks to die without their fins. Although the USDA revoked licenses of bunchers who find animals to sell to labs, bred beagles are used in testing at George Regents University. The horse and carriage is thought romantic, but the horse's life is filled with drudgery or deadly. Florida. In the landscape are some of the images Florida wants you to think of: Mickey Mouse holding the state flag, a Florida beach with the iconic alligator, dolphins in the ocean, oranges with blossoms, palm trees, and the state animal, the panther. Bubbles floating nearby contain the exploited captive dolphin, an unnecessary bear hunt orphaning many cubs, the exposed abuse at Larson Dairy, the monkeys raised at primate products for experimentation, and manatees and fish are victims of red tide. West Virginia. Abolitionist John Brown, Katherine Johnson, African-American NASA mathematician whose work was critical to the success of the first space flights, and Don Knotts, Barney Fife of The Andy Griffith Show, were all residents of West Virginia. West Virginia has some of the darkest skies in the eastern United States, and floating over that sky in a bubble, the hunted bear hangs from a tree, while nearby the black bears still free represent the state animal. Massive CAFOs where chickens languish are highly valued livestock commodities, and animal testing thrives at West Virginia University. Multiple dogfighting rings have been exposed, and dog racing is a popular gambling activity. Virginia. Virginia is for lovers, and Foghorn Leghorn woos Miss Prissy. Nearby, the big-eared bat and American foxhound state animals both eye beagles who have burst the bubble, part of the 4,000 freed and Vigo dogs bred for animal testing. Bubbles intact contain coyotes, victims of, quote, family-friendly killing contests, and the Natural Bridge Zoo on the 10 worst for elephants list. The number one agricultural product are broilers, chickens genetically bred for rapid growth for their short lives. And otters are either in a cage or manhandled at the State Fair of Virginia. The letters spelling Virginia contain Edgar Allan Poe, Booker T. Washington, and Ella Fitzgerald, some of the many greats born there. Pennsylvania. In bubbles, the animals of Pennsylvania exist for their lonely lives. A collapsed horse is one of the many who die for our entertainment at Parks Racing. A dairy cow is abused beyond the usual at Mason-Dixon Farms, supplier of Land O'Lakes, and a bear languishes at Pymatuning Deer Park. Rabbits are tested on and then killed at U of Pittsburgh, and multitudes of fish exist their entire lives in the tanks of aquaculture. These animals float over rolling hills with a Pennsylvania Dutch horse and buggy, and ballooning and river tubing, popular pastimes. Hershey's, the Liberty Bell, Keith Haring, and Mr. Rogers call Pennsylvania home with the white-tailed deer state animal and the ruffed grouse state bird. Delaware. The fox is a state animal who rests on a rock before the landscape and waterways of Delaware. Letters containing Joe Biden, Bob Marley, who called Delaware home for years, and Victrola's mascot Nipper, and Miles the Monster hover nearby, floating bubbles with animals in their predicaments. Fish circle endlessly in the antibiotic-saturated waters of massive commercial fisheries, and camels circle circus grounds when not in training or in cages. Mice endure swim tests they will not survive. Deer are in the crosshairs, and broiler chickens are crammed in sheds that they will never leave. Connecticut. The varied landscape includes Connecticut's Gold Coast, fall colors on the Merritt Parkway, and Mystic Seaport with a sperm whale state animal swimming nearby. Animals in bad situations float over the landscape. One bubble contains 2 beluga whales brought from Canada for research on care and behaviors, both of whom died soon after the grueling transport. Some others hold an elephant at Comerford and Sons Petting Zoo, deprived of all that is natural. Attack dogs trained to be aggressive with prisoners. University of Connecticut Health Center pays fines for its cruel, incompetent, and sometimes fatal treatment of animals, while Oak Ridge and other dairy facilities with carousel milking practices the robbing of babies from their mothers. New Jersey. The Queen of Pop, here's Johnny, the Boss. Old Blue Eyes, Superman, and Tony Soprano are a fraction of iconic characters from New Jersey. Falcons are hired to control the seagulls, and nearby, Snooki and the Situation pose on the Jersey Shore. Built in 1881, Lucy the Elephant is the oldest roadside attraction in the USA. Activities range from gambling in casinos, Thomas Edison National Park, to hiking the beaches and waterfalls. The state animal, the horse, does not fare well, as the Racing Commission allows Monmouth Park jockeys to use whips. Other bubbles hold an on-again, off-again bear hunt of this protected species. Pigs suffer in gestation crates, and 25 dolphins and whales have washed ashore in just a few months. In a win for animals, New Jersey bans the sale of products tested on animals or any testing on animals for cosmetics. Maryland. The state dog is the Chesapeake Bay Retriever, and the Baltimore Oriole is the state bird. Michael Phelps, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and Babe Ruth are some of the powerful people born in Maryland. Floating over the rivers and fields of black-eyed Susans are bubbles holding unfortunate animals of Maryland. Kids learn to kill deer for fun. The National Institute of Mental Health injects toxins into monkeys' brains using $50 million of taxpayer money. Experimentation on owls at Johns Hopkins, nutrient pollution causing massive fish die-offs, and multiple-time offender of animal cruelty, Jerry Hawley's Exotics neglect is responsible for the death of 2 zebras. Maine. Inspiration is found by Andrew Wyeth for Christina's World, with Maine's rugged landscape of fields, rocky shores, islands, and pines. The state animal is the moose. Eartha is the largest globe, and Hussey's General Store advertises guns, wedding gowns, and cold beer. Tough realities for animals are conveyed in Bubbles. Fish trapped in fish farms, bear hunts where trapping, hounding, and baiting are still used, and calves are separated from their mothers in the dairy industry. The lobster industry threatens the nearly extinct right whale with its trap lines, and dogs race in the icy winter 250-mile Can-Am Crown and are chained and tethered in extreme temperatures or bagged when injured. Massachusetts. The landscape and the letters spelling Massachusetts contain idealistic and iconic images found in this state. The Boston Terrier leaps over Fenway Park, and a historic windmill is near Ralph Cahoon's Mermaid's Wash Day inspired scene. In Bubbles, the animals of Massachusetts struggle. Lobsters are boiled alive, mice are tested on at Elm Hill, deer are targeted at Blue Hills Reservation, many sharks killed in shark killing tournaments, and beagles are experimented on at Charles River Lab. New York. In Bubbles, the animals of New York sometimes suffer in plain sight. A horse collapses from being forced to drag a carriage through heavy traffic, noise, and pollution. And in the religious ritual of Kapora, chickens are swung by the neck until killed. Animals are slaughtered in wet markets, and behind the scenes, captive mink are killed for fur coats at Saks Fifth Avenue. Ducks are force-fed to fatten and enlarge their livers for the delicacy of foie gras, and the Marshall operation breeds dogs and pigs with disease for animal testing. New York's well-known landscapes include New York City, Niagara Falls, Thousand Islands, Jones Beach, Rockefeller Center, and Fort Ticonderoga. Iconic images include the beaver state animal, the symbol of rap, 42nd Street, and the Statue of Liberty. Vermont. Vermont is the home to Ben & Jerry's, the Vermont teddy bear, maple syrup, skiing, skating, and fall colors. The Morgan horse state animal, the hermit thrush state bird, and the state flag are Vermont symbols. Bubbles contain those animals behind the scenes or relegated to be forms of entertainment. Turkeys are barely able to move on a turkey farm, and ponies are pushed to their limits in pulling contests where they drag pallets of concrete blocks. The hunting culture is depicted in one scene, but in a good news bubble, the killing contests of wolves and coyotes have recently been banned. The story of the dairy industry is portrayed with the pollution of the waterways, calves taken and isolated while their mothers are tethered to milking machines in massive dark buildings. Milk is dumped due to surpluses, an after effect of the COVID pandemic. New Hampshire. The landscape and lettering of New Hampshire include winter snow, fall colors, Storyland, the white-tailed deer, state animal, and astronaut Krista McAuliffe. Bubbles contain animals whose only use is to be entertainment or food. It's never too young in New Hampshire to teach your children to kill the state animal, and Clark's Trading Post has been exploiting bears for entertainment since 1930. Dog sled racing is grueling for dogs, and a calf isolated in its calf hut will never see its mother again. 300 million male chicks deemed useless are killed every year in the United States. Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the ocean state with the ocean, sailing, and kite flying on green hills. Exploitation of animals in the ocean state is illustrated in floating bubbles. In this painting, there are victims of the exotic bird trade. Elephants are subjected to cruel bullhook training at Roger Williams Zoo, listed on the 10 worst list for elephants. Cows are captive in the dairy business, and the truth of factory farm caged chickens hides behind the cheery egg company name, Little Rhodey. This bubble drifts by the iconic free and happy state bird, the Rhode Island Red. At Brown University, there is the Center for Alternatives to Animals in Testing, but emergency medicine residents from Alpert Medical Center at Brown University are still taught skills using live pigs.